Welcome to the Under Construction Podcast with me, Martin Williams. Here we talk about how to build or rebuild your life one step at a time. Welcome to the Under Construction Podcast. My name is Martin Williams. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You may do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. All the links to the podcast can be found at guidedexpressions.com/podcast with an S. Today's episode has to do with entering the state. So in a lot of my works, I have referenced Neville Goddard, and I've talked about how influential he has been in my life. All the things that I've learned from him and from his readings. And for those of you who don't know who Neville Goddard is, he was a metaphysical teacher. The bulk of his work was done from the 1950s to roughly 1971, 1972. As far as I know, he taught right up to his departure from this plane of existence. And a lot of people have borrowed from his work. A lot of people, I think, have been influenced by his work, whether they want to, give him credit or not. You definitely hear a lot of his work in many of the metaphysical authors that we know and love, from Tony Robbins to Wayne Dyer to Louise Hay. In my view, Neville Goddard influenced them all on various, varying degrees of influence. So, definitely Google him to learn more about who he is. And I think virtually all his work is in the public domain, so you don't even have to buy any books from him. You can, just kind of Google, and, there's so many places where you can just read and listen to his stuff as much as you want. And, it's good. His information is really good. So one of the things that he talks about is entering the state. And I'd like to really delve into that on this episode, because I think a lot of people, myself included, we expend so much energy and so much time trying to ascend to a place, right? We're trying to get somewhere. We're trying to work our way there. And, hard work has its place in the journey. There's certainly a point where you have to execute whatever it is that you're trying to do. But I also think that we have to get the mindset of where we want to be. And I think that that's probably more important than what you do, because there's a lot of hardworking people who don't live the way that they want to live. There are a lot of hardworking people who are unhappy. And I think the reason is that they are living in a different state. Okay? So what do I mean by state? I keep saying that, right? So, I'll give you an example. When I was in undergrad, I was going to a school in Norfolk, Virginia, and my grades were okay, but I had decided that I wanted to become a doctor. I wanted to be in medical school, right? So, I started talking to people about, how could I make that happen? And, more and more people would say, well, you got to have straight A's, and, you got to kill the MCAT, which is the medical college admissions test. You gotta, do really well on that, and then you gotta do this and you gotta do that. So it just kind of listed out everything. And, for the longest time, I was really struggling because even though I had this dream, I had this goal, I didn't see how it was going to happen, because, I didn't have the grades. I just didn't see how it was going to pan out for me. But there was a medical school in town, on the other side of town, Eastern Virginia Medical School. So I found out that I could I could study there, right? All I had to do was show my college ID, and I could hang out there and do work there. And that library was a lot quieter than the one that was on my campus. On my campus, the library was it's kind of like a hangout spot, right? So everyone would come there, and there just wasn't the level of quiet that I needed. And I had changed my major. I was taking harder courses, so I definitely needed to be able to concentrate. So I would go to the medical school, and what happened, and it really wasn't intentional at first, but it kind of just dawned on me. I think it was this God, this kind of opening my eyes, was that I was acting like a medical student, right? I had entered the state of a medical student, and I was living in that state, even though in my reality, I was just an undergrad. But anytime I went to that library, I was living in the state of a medical student, and I started seeing myself as that. And the more I did that, and the more that I embraced that, doors began to open, right? And I started meeting people, and I met the one of the people in the minority affairs, right? And so minority affairs was a way to help underrepresented minorities get into medical school. So I explained to her my situation and everything else, and so she said, well, talk to this person here, right? And so I was introduced to a man in Georgetown, at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And this was someone that she knew personally, right? And so I went to see him. And Georgetown University had this program where, it was called a post-baccalaureate program. And it's kind of like a bridge program between undergrad and medical school, where you basically take a year to basically prove that you can handle medical school. So you take first year courses with real Georgetown University students, and you take it at a half. You basically take like a half load, right? You don't take the full load, you take a half load, and then the other half is basically helping you with different research and all, and different things. Forgive me, it's literally been over 15 years since I've even thought about this. So the details are I'm trying to remember all the details. But basically it was half, you take a half load of a medical school, and then the other half was, things like study skills and things like that. So when I went to Georgetown, and Georgetown is this beautiful campus, number one, right? And it's in DC, and I went up there for the day, and I had just decided, you know what, I'm going to Georgetown, right? Right? And I talked with the guy up there, and he says, well, your grades probably aren't enough to get into this program, but if you go to this program in Southern Illinois and do a year there and then come here, you can definitely, I feel like I can get you in, right? And so I said, okay, I don't know about Southern Illinois, right? I really want to go to Georgetown, you know what I mean? I really want to go here. And so, long story short, I graduated at Norfolk State. I got into the Southern Illinois program, which was, it was no small feat, really. But I was able to get into that program. And when I got to Southern Illinois, it was good, but, also kind of lost focus a little bit, right? And eventually, I was able to get into a medical school, but it was a foreign medical school. And I basically just ran out of money because I was basically borrowing to do all of this, right? But my point is that I went from being a marginal student, right? And not really having any contacts, any mentors, anything like that. But when I entered the state of a medical student, I started attracting the help. I started attracting the mentors. I started attracting the money. And looking back on it, had I known then what I know now, I probably would have been able to stay and I probably would have finished, because it's not about whether you have the mentors or have the money or have the connections or have the, even the mentality, because some people are able to get straight A's in their classes, right? And really not expend too much effort. And then there's other people who struggle to get a B. And so is a person that struggles to get a B so much much less smarter than the person who gets A's? Not necessarily, because we all know that there's different types of intelligence. And the formal level of intelligence or the formal type of intelligence is just one type of intelligence. There's all kinds of intelligence. And we also know that a lot of people have become successful who really weren't A students. How many people founded billion-dollar companies, excuse me, pardon me, how many people founded billion-dollar companies and they dropped out? Right? So my point in all this is, when you enter the state, you can attract everything you need. You attract the resources, you attract the connections, and I believe you can even attract the mentality. You can attract the intelligence. Everything you need is in the state. It's not, I think a lot of people are trying to chase a result instead of entering the state. And when you enter the state, the results come. So think about what it is that you want. Maybe you want a better job. What I would do is I would enter the state of that better job, right? I would start thinking and talking from the place of having a better job. And it's not, excuse me, it's not about so much loving where you are now, but it's embracing the state of, I'm doing what I love now. I'm doing what fulfills me now. And what happens if you stay in it long enough, and I'm not saying you got to stay in it for years, but if you stay in it long enough, you're going to start seeing and you're going to start attracting the thing that you need, right? And, maybe you need to make an introduction. Maybe there's somebody you need to talk to, or maybe you need some funding, or maybe you need some insight, or maybe you need a book, right? If you stay in that state, you're going to attract the things that you need to live in that state. And my addition to that would be, once you feel yourself slipping out of that state, just go back in. And that's probably the mistake that I made, is that I was in that state in Norfolk, and then I got to Southern Illinois, and I stayed in that state, but so many people weren't in that state around me, so I slipped out, right? And, it's just, it's part of life. You learn, right? So, I slipped out of that state for a season. And, once I fell out, then, that was kind of it for me. I was just basically struggling and trying to keep it together instead of, embodying the state and staying in that state and staying in that mindset. And it happens, it happens in anything that we're trying to do. It's like, you may start a business and you might have some wins, you may get some customers and everything else, but, we slip back into that old state. And, that old state, we didn't have a business. We didn't have customers, right? So it's easy to kind of slip back into that. My suggestion is anytime you feel yourself slipping away, just enter back in, right? Because in the state is where everything you need is, right? In the state of, being in a committed, happy relationship, that's where the love comes in. That's where the insight comes in to make the relationship work. That's where the understanding comes in and everything else, right? A lot of people are trying to make relationships work, but they're in a state of singleness, right? I think a lot of times people get divorced because they don't leave their single days behind, right? When you're married, it's not about you anymore alone. It's about you and that other person, right? So any decision you make affects that other person, right? When you become a parent, it's not about just you anymore, or you and your spouse. It's about you, your spouse, and this other person, right? This person that you're molding to one day go out into the world and hopefully make an impact. So you have to go into the state of, okay, it's not just about me, it's about these other people in my life, and my decisions affect them as well as myself. So I enter into the state of, now I'm a parent. Okay, I've got to make better decisions now. I enter into the state of, now I'm a partner. I got to make better decisions now. If I want to lose weight, I enter into the state of someone who is in control of their weight. Now I'm not eating the way that I used to eat. I'm not going to McDonald's every day or eating fast food every day. I still eat too much, but I'm not eating it as much as I used to, right? I'm exercising every day, right? I'm watching the amount of stress that I am taking on, right? So all of these things come back to the state. You've got to enter the state of where you want to be. And when you enter that state, everything you need comes when you enter the state, right? So I want to talk more about this. I've kind of gone a little bit beyond where I wanted to go today, but hopefully you get something out of it. So thank you so much for listening to the Under Construction podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I'll talk to you soon. Don't forget to subscribe to the Under Construction podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. For more information on Guided Expressions courses and products, go to guidedexpressions.com/products.